The city lay in ruins, its towers broken into jagged teeth against a bruised sky, its streets lined with ash that never settled. The war had ended months ago, but the silence of victory was heavier than the sound of battle had ever been. Patrols walked through hollow avenues not to keep the peace, but to remind everyone that peace was fragile. Among those patrols was a soldier who carried himself with the exhaustion of someone who had seen too much. He moved with steady purpose, but his eyes were always searching, not for enemies, but for remnants of something worth saving. That was when he noticed her. At first it was only a flicker of movement among the rubble, a figure small and frail, hunched over what remained of a market square. As he drew closer, the details sharpened into something almost surreal. A child, her skin the shade of lavender dusk, hair pale as ash and tangled, ears elongated and twitching with each sound. A strip of cloth was tied firmly over her eyes, so worn and grimy that it blended with her skin. Blind, yet moving with a curious precision. She wasn't searching randomly. Her fingers hovered over shards of debris as though she could sense something beyond touch. She would reject food scraps, stepping past rotting cloth and splintered wood, instead gathering strange fragments of metal and fractured crystals into a pouch tied at her hip. He paused, watching. At first he thought she was simply desperate, that she scavenged junk in the hope of trading it for scraps. Yet her movements were too deliberate. Each piece she selected seemed chosen with intention, not chance. She would tilt her head, run her fingers over the surface, and only then decide if it was worth keeping. To anyone else, she was gathering trash. To her, it was treasure. The soldier approached carefully, boots crunching on the rubble. She did not run. Instead she froze, her ears twitching, her hand curling protectively around the pouch at her side. When he crouched to her level, she bared small teeth in a warning, but her body shook. She was afraid, but stubborn. He reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar, extending it toward her. The child sniffed the air but ignored it, clutching instead at a cracked shard of crystal with both hands, as though it were worth more than food. He frowned, confused. Why reject nourishment when her frame was so thin it seemed a gust of wind could topple her? He tried to press the ration into her hands, but she pushed it away and whispered something in a language he could barely recognize, a name or perhaps a prayer. She lifted the crystal shard, pressing it against her ear as if listening to a secret only she could hear. Something in him stirred. He should have walked away, should have told himself this was not his duty, that a blind alien child among ruins was not his concern. Yet he could not. There was a defiance in her, a strange dignity that made abandonment unthinkable. He stayed, watching longer than he intended. She grew used to his presence, no longer flinching at his shadow. At one point she reached into her pouch, pulled out a piece, and held it toward him. Her small hands, bruised and scraped, pressed the shard into his palm. It was cool at first, but then he felt it, a faint hum, a vibration beneath his skin, as though the fragment carried a heartbeat of its own. He tightened his grip, startled. His training told him it was just scrap, damaged tech of no use. But his instincts told him otherwise. The girl tilted her head, sensing his reaction, and a faint smile touched her lips. She seemed to say without words, "Now you understand." He didn't, not fully, but something within shifted. This wasn't a game of survival or madness. She was gathering pieces for a reason he could not yet see. The soldier looked around the wreckage of the city, the hollow shells of once great towers, the market stalls broken beyond recognition, the people who shuffled through life with their eyes cast downward. Everyone else saw ruin. But this child, blind though she was seeing something else entirely. She was finding worth in what the world called worthless. He closed his fist around the shard, feeling the hum again. For the first time since the war ended, the soldier felt a flicker of something he thought had been lost. Curiosity, even hope. The girl waited silently, as if testing him. With a steady breath, he reached out and placed the shard back in her hand. She nodded solemnly, then slipped her tiny fingers into his, guiding him forward as though inviting him into her strange world of treasure hidden in the ruins. That was the moment he realized leaving was no longer an option. Whatever her secret was, whatever she sought in the rubble of a broken city, he was now a part of it. And though he didn't yet know why, he felt that this fragile child might matter more than the whole patrol, more than all the ash-filled streets combined. She had shown him something no briefing, no command, no war story ever had, that even in the aftermath of destruction, value remained, if only someone dared to see it. He followed her through the skeleton of the city, a silent shadow moving behind the small figure who never stumbled though her eyes were bound. She walked with certainty, tapping rubble with her bare feet, pausing at heaps of twisted steel and shattered stone. Every time she knelt, her hands spread wide, fingers brushing surfaces until they hovered over a fragment that pulsed faintly with unseen rhythm. She would tilt her head, listening as if to a whisper, then tuck the object away. Others passed her with scorn, muttering about the cursed child who touched garbage and called it hers, but she ignored them. The soldier noticed that unlike the rest, she did not beg, did not chase after food lines. She lived by instinct, following a pattern invisible to all but her. He began examining what she gathered. At first glance, the pieces were useless. Broken circuits, alloy shards, crystals cracked down the middle. But when he held them long enough, strange details revealed themselves. The metals bore no rust, the crystals vibrated faintly when pressed against his palm, and certain fragments emitted brief sparks when struck together. He remembered training lectures about the alien empire's mastery of energy manipulation, knowledge so refined it seemed like sorcery. Their fall had scattered that mastery into ash and ruin. Yet here was a blind child collecting its fragments, guided by something more than luck. One evening, as dusk settled and shadows stretched long across the ruins, he watched her arrange the pieces in careful patterns on the ground. She laid shards in circles, crystals at the center, wires stretching like veins between them. He crouched, curious, and moved one of the shards closer to the crystal. To his shock, a faint glow flickered. The child tilted her head, a pleased hum slipping from her lips, and adjusted another fragment. The glow strengthened, shimmering into a fragile hologram. For an instant, stars spun above the crystal, a broken map reaching into space. Then it sputtered out, leaving silence heavy in the air. The soldier's pulse quickened. This wasn't scavenging. She was rebuilding. Somehow, through senses he couldn't understand, she was piecing together technology everyone else dismissed as trash. He stared at her cloth-bound eyes and realized blindness wasn't her weakness, it was her strength. She perceived vibrations, energy flows, harmonics no sighted creature could. What others overlooked as junk, she recognized as fragments of her people's greatest achievements. Rumors began to circle. Locals whispered that the girl carried something dangerous, that she should not be touched. Some claimed she was cursed to wander ruins until death. Others spoke in hushed tones of a bloodline thought extinguished, of royal heirs slaughtered when the bombs fell. The soldier dismissed superstition until the moment she revealed the pendant. She reached into her ragged tunic, pulled out a necklace so tarnished he almost missed the insignia etched into its metal. When he brushed the dirt away, he froze. The crest was unmistakable, the mark of the alien royal house. His thoughts churned. This was no nameless orphan. She carried blood that once commanded fleets and ruled empires. Her people might see her as a spark of hope, or as a threat worth silencing. He studied her small frame, her bruised hands clutching fragments, her face serene despite the ruin around her. She was a child, yet the weight she carried was greater than most armies. That night, he couldn't sleep. He turned the day's discoveries over in his mind. She was more than a scavenger. Her pouch of fragments was more than survival. And the pendant was not an ornament, it was proof. She was the last survivor of a house thought destroyed. The soldier stared into the darkness, realizing that he had stumbled into something larger than himself. Protecting her might change nothing, or it might change everything. The girl sat beside him, humming softly while tracing shards across the dirt. Without words, she seemed to tell him that treasure could be found even in ruins. He understood now. Her trash was not trash at all. It was the key to a truth buried under rubble, a truth powerful enough to reshape the fragile peace that hung over both their peoples. And for reasons he couldn't explain, she had chosen him to share it. The city seemed to hold its breath as rumors spread, whispers curling through alleys and burned-out courtyards. Word had reached both human garrisons and alien survivors that a child was being sheltered, a child who gathered more than scraps. To some she was a curiosity, to others a danger. The soldier knew the eyes on them were multiplying. Every step followed. Every fragment she touched watched with suspicion. He kept closer to her now, not as a patrolman but as a guardian, because he had seen what she was building and knew what it meant. She worked tirelessly, her small hands arranging fragments with precision that defied explanation. With his help, she completed a device that sparked suddenly to life, humming with a resonance that shivered through the air. A beam projected upward, scattering symbols and constellations in luminous strands. It was not a weapon but a memory, a recording buried in crystal code. Voices long dead spoke in alien tongues, their tones woven with both command and compassion. He couldn't understand the words, but he understood the weight. This was no scavenger's prize. This was legacy. Yet legacy was peril. When others saw the projection, fear and greed stirred. Human officers whispered that such relics could rekindle rebellion. Alien elders argued it should belong only to their kind, to guard against contamination. Mercenaries sniffed opportunity, and more than one shadow followed too close. The soldier's instincts screamed that the child was becoming a target, hunted not for what she was, but for what she carried within her and around her. One night, as they sheltered beneath a fractured arch, she reached for his hand. Her touch was steady, not that of a frightened child, but of someone who had chosen trust. She pressed a shard into his palm, guiding his fingers to place it in the device. When he did, light erupted, not chaotic this time, but whole, forming a beacon that pulsed into the sky. Ships in low orbit stirred, their sensors triggered by the signal. Somewhere above, eyes turned toward them. He realized with a sinking clarity that she was more than an orphan, more than a survivor clinging to scraps. She was a key, her bloodline the lock, and the fragments she collected the map to something far greater than ruins. Her blindness let her hear what no one else could, her hands piecing together the forgotten voice of her people. And now, with the beacon alive, the galaxy would hear it too. For the first time she looked up at him, though she could not see, and her expression carried no fear. She trusted him to be what she could not, her eyes in a world determined to strip her of everything. In that moment, the soldier understood his choice was already made. He would protect her not because of the crest around her neck or the fragments she carried, but because she deserved to finish what she had begun. The fate of peace, fragile as glass, now rested in the hands of a blind child who saw clearer than anyone else. And beside her, he would stand, no matter who came to claim her. The signal had changed everything. No longer were they shadows in the ruins, but the center of a storm that pulled rival forces toward them. Soldiers in uniform demanded the child be surrendered for interrogation. Alien survivors claimed her as their heir, a symbol to rally behind. Mercenaries lurked, eager to seize either the girl or the fragments she carried. None spoke of her as a child. She was a title, a weapon, a prize. The soldier stepped forward, placing himself between her and them all, his voice steady against the rising chaos. He told them what he had seen, what they refused to, that she had not been scavenging for scraps of war, but piecing together the memory of her people, shards of history lost in fire. He described the hum of crystals, the maps of stars, the recordings of voices speaking peace, all dismissed as worthless until she breathed life back into them. What they called trash, she alone had recognized as treasure. His words carried the weight of a witness who had nothing to gain but the truth. The child raised her hand, and with a trembling touch activated a shard. A figure bloomed in light before them all, a queen with eyes like fire, her voice resonating in tones that silenced every murmur. Though the language was alien, the intent was clear. She spoke not of conquest, but of unity, of treaties once honored, of hope forged in trust. The projection wavered, but held long enough for everyone to see what had been buried in rubble, that peace had once been possible, and could be again. Gasps rippled, anger faltered, and silence stretched like a fragile bridge between two worlds. For the first time since the bombs fell, humans and aliens stood together, not as conquerors or conquered, but as witnesses to something greater than war. The soldier looked at the child and saw not just an heir, but a teacher who had shown them all how to see differently. Blind, yet able to perceive value where no one else could. Broken, yet able to assemble fragments into something whole. Where armies failed, a starving orphan had succeeded. The choice was no longer his alone. It was theirs, all of them. To treat her as a pawn in another struggle, or to follow the example she had set. Slowly, weapons lowered. Voices softened. A fragile understanding was born, not because of orders or treaties, but because a child had revealed that ruins still held worth. He stayed at her side, not as captor or savior, but as guardian of the path she had uncovered. Together they would walk it, not because destiny demanded it, but because it was right. The galaxy would remember her not as the blind child of rubble, not even as the hidden heir of a fallen house, but as the one who proved that humanity's greatest gift was not power or conquest, but the ability to see treasure where others saw only trash. And by that gift, the future had been remade.